All right. What's going on, everybody? And welcome to another episode of Time Out with Doc and Caveman. As always, you are here with Dr. Fantasy and the Fantasy Caveman. We are on our last episode here of our 2021-22 team previews. We made it back-to-back seasons. I mean, honestly, it's a tall order to go through all 30 teams individually, and I don't really see, I don't know, maybe I've missed it, but I don't see many other channels doing that. So I think it is unique that whether it's the number one team or a team like the Thunder that are completely hopeless, we will break it down and talk about it. So we appreciate the support. We definitely had a lot of our videos had more views than last season, and there's been lots of great momentum, more subscribers. So we appreciate that support. Make sure you guys continue to like each video. That helps us out a lot, and subscribe on YouTube. We also post the audio version on Spotify or wherever else you listen to podcasts. So if you prefer that, you can subscribe there as well. But today we're going to be talking about the number one team in the league last year, which I think people forgot very quickly because nobody ever talks about them. But it's the Utah Jazz, and last season they were 52-20. As I mentioned, number one team in the league, first seed in the West. A few stats from last season. They were Quinn Snyder's their head coach, by the way. I always mention the head coach. They were third in offensive rating, fourth in defensive rating, so top five, top four in both categories, which is pretty amazing. A few other random team stats. They were second in three-point percentage, fourth fewest. One random stat. They had the fourth fewest points off of assists, which I was a little surprised by, but just a random stat to throw in there. They were the second best team in terms of defending the three-point line, and then they allowed the second worst two-point percentage as well. So all around the board, very efficient. Individual season leaders, Donovan Mitchell, 26.4 points, Jordan Clarkson at 18.4 points, and then Bogdanovic at 17 points. Rebounds, Rudy Gobert at 13.5, Royce O'Neal at 6.8. Assists, you had Mike Conley at 6. Donovan Mitchell at 5.2, steals Mike Conley at 1.4, and then blocks Rudy Gobert at 2.7. So, Caveman, who impressed you from this Jazz squad last year?
For me, the answer is Jordan Clarkson. I mean, this is a guy. It's easy to impress when you win Sixth Man of the Year. So he was, like you mentioned, he was second on the team in scoring, coming off the bench with 16.4. And when everybody was clamoring for him to start when Mike Conley missed that chunk of time, I think he's better. I really do think he's better served. Even if something were to happen to Mitchell or Conley, I don't think you put Jordan Clarkson into that starting lineup. I think he's too perfect for the role he has right now. Is kind of, and that's not a knock on him, but that I think that's more of a compliment. That no matter what the situation is, you can count on him on a bench unit and the lead you. He kind of reminds me of the Lou Williams years. Of Lou Williams being that basically felt like he should have won Sixth Man of the Year like 10 years in a row.
Yeah.
I think Jordan Clarkson has the ability to go on that kind of six-man run. He's when we talk about the Jazz, and they get they might be the most disrespected team in the league.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not even close. What is the biggest complaint people have on them is where is their scoring coming from outside of Donovan Mitchell? And their number two scorer, without really a debate, is Jordan Clarkson, who's coming out their bench, which may be part of their problem. But I think, Jordan Clarkson just his scoring ability alone and being able to be that guy off the bench is what does it for me.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point to bring up with them. It's interesting that they were so efficient offensively, and then when you look at their roster, I mean, we talk all the time about who's the team's third scorer. I mean, their second scorer is coming off their bench. So, I mean, it definitely is one of those things that I think still is going to hold them back from becoming a legitimate, and not to say they're not a legitimate title contender, but I don't know. Can you win a title in today's NBA when Jordan Clarkson is your number two scorer? I don't know, honestly.
Yeah,
I don't know.
he's that guy. But
That's why, and I think this is a team, if you put a, top end, even if it wasn't a top end number two scorer, if you provided, I don't know, just the random name that comes to mind is like CJ McCollum, who provides a lot of offense. If you put him, that would
oh
all
yeah,
of a sudden change. If you put him into this defensive system, that completely changes the outlook. So I feel like they're still missing a piece like that.
so you're
But
saying CJ McCollum is the missing piece in them being the championship?
I mean, as crazy as it sounds, maybe though, I think that it would give them a better chance if he was on this team than what the chance that they have now. Not the, and I mentioned to you before we started recording, this is it's an old school team, except they shoot a lot of threes, but they're just very efficient offensively. They play a very team oriented game, which is kind of interesting to me still that they had so few points off of assists last year because it doesn't seem that way when you're watching them. But um, they play as a team. They have a great defensive anchor. They play great team defense. They play a very old school game, and I respect that. Guys that stood out to me last year, Clarkson definitely was huge for them. He came in mid-season the year before, so I don't know if he was fully acclimated to being a part of this team, but you could tell the difference last season. Joe Ingles is a big one for me. I
Joe
mean,
Ingles,
how many?
it was that, and that's the just before you get back to it, Joe Ingles, that was the race for sixth man of the year, where
Yeah,
both
the
guys
same
were
team.
from the
Yeah,
Utah, both from the same team, and I remember the moment where Jordan Clarkson, they were live on TNT, I believe. Jordan Clarkson found out he won Rookie of the Year from Joe Ingles
yeah.
live on TNT. I love that kind of moment.
Yeah, and Joe Ingles, you're definitely right. He's going to be in the running for that award as well this season. And to me, I thought it was interesting that I feel like how many times did we do prospect profiles this year and we compared somebody to Joe Ingles? I mean, we would have never done that in previous seasons. So that within itself tells you all you need to know about his jump last year. He shot 45% from three with 6 attempts per game, which is very impressive. He's a great ball handler. And I don't think Jordan Clarkson's always the most effective guy with the ball in his hand. I don't think you want him to be your primary ball handler, but that's why him and Joe Ingles work so well together on that second unit is they really complement one
Best
another.
second unit duo in the league.
Oh, yeah, it's not even close. I mean, on there's no one that even touches that. So I think Ingles deserves a lot of respect. Great defender as well. Mike Conley made his first All-Star team, so that's pretty cool. He deserves a shout out. He's been in the league for a long time. He really struggled in his first year with Utah. I mean, he was pretty terrible for being honest about it. So he really came out and had a nice season for them last year. Shot his highest 3-point percentage in his entire career, which is really saying something. He's been in the league since 2007, so for him to do that's very impressive. Didn't turn over the ball very much. Was a really strong presence for them in that starting lineup. And then you got a Donovan Mitchell too. Took another step forward. All of his averages went up last season. He was more of a playmaker than we've ever seen him, and I feel like he's really buying into this system, but he's still the focal point of the offense. And I think that's important is he's not saying, you know what, I'm going to do my thing and just, hog the ball and score a bunch of points. He was very effective being that focal point while not going outside of what they asked him to do. And I think that's really important is he's buying into it. And that's what I saw last season. There was times where I was like, man, I don't know if he's buying into this whole old school Utah Jazz kind of philosophy that Quinn Snyder's trying to instill. But last season, I didn't believe that. I think that he's a big part. I mean, he's the most important part of them ever winning a championship. And I think that was really critical last season. And one of the reasons, if we're being honest about it, I think they took as big of a jump as they did. Because when I was doing the notes for this episode, I was sitting here, I was like, all right, what changed with the Utah Jazz last year? Because when you look at it compared to the previous season, they didn't have that many new pieces come in. So really what happened is just internally, they got a lot better. They played better as a unit. They bought into the system. And I think really that was the difference for them. So let's go through their offseason acquisitions. They didn't have a ton of excitement here, but one draft pick, Jared Butler, 40th overall, through the through free agency slash the trade market. They brought in Rudy Gay, Hassan Whiteside, Eric Pascal coming over from Golden State, and then they lost a few guys that weren't really important pieces in their rotation, if we're being honest about it. Jarrell Brantley, Justin James, Juwan Morgan, Georges Niang, Matt Thomas, and then Ersan Ilyasova was there last season. So what do you think? Once again, we're getting to these top teams, and they're quiet off seasons, and
Yeah.
you have said the last probably 6 episodes, it feels like
Yeah.
now, a quiet off season is not necessarily a bad thing.
No, I mean, Georges Niang played some okay minutes for him, so he's probably the only guy they lost where like, okay, maybe has a tiny impact. But yeah, the Jared Butler pick is interesting, especially when you look at their depth chart going into next season. We'll talk about him more when we get to the depth chart. But Rudy Gay, I mean, at this point, for him to get a 3-year deal I believe he got $18.5 million for that 3 years, I think, speaks to how he's been able to adapt to what he is at this point in his career, and I think he is going to be I think he's going to be very important to the Jazz this season. Whiteside. As far as Whiteside's concerned, man, his drop has been just amazing. It's been astounding to watch how far Whiteside has really fallen. We were talking about when he was with the Heat, and we were talking about he was one of the premier block guys and overall defenders in the league, if we're being honest about it. And now he's struggling to get barely over a minimum deal. He's probably not going to play a ton this season because you got Rudy Gobert is going to eat up a lot of those. Is going to eat up a ton of minutes, so he kind of he's basically fighting for backup minutes at this point. So, I mean, but yeah, I mean, just a quiet. Yep, you mentioned I said quiet off season is the best off season. That's kind of what happened here.
Yeah, similar to the Suns, I'm going to call them moves on the margin, which is, they're nothing sexy, big splashes, but they're small moves, small rotational players that are coming in. This team, we've talked a lot about the second unit. They're even deeper this season. I mean, Rudy Gay, Hassan Whiteside, and Eric Pascal have all played valuable minutes for their teams in the past. Rudy Gay was pretty darn good, honestly, last year with the Spurs, and he played a decent amount and provided a lot of offense off of that bench. So he definitely is going to be pretty important coming off this bench. We've seen flashes from Eric Pascal, especially when they were banged up and he was in the starting lineup a few years ago, and even last year. Hassan Whiteside, we've seen flashes. So those three are better than any of the. And Niang did play minutes for them, but those three players, I'd rather have them than any of the guys that they lost. So I could argue they just got even deeper. And this is the team that I would have already said had the best second unit in the league last year, and they just got better. So I think that it was overall really.
I don't even think it's a question. They have the best second unit in the NBA.
Yeah, and I don't really, and we've gone through every team, and this is the last one. I can't think of one that honestly touches it, in my opinion. So that's going to be an important piece for this team this season. Let's go through their depth chart here. In the backcourt, Mike Conley, Donovan Mitchell. Behind them, you have Jordan Clarkson. You have Jared Butler. Joe Ingles can kind of play everywhere, so insert him wherever you feel like it, but he's on the second unit. At the 3, they have Bogdanovic starting. Rudy Gay, Eric Pascal will be playing minutes there at the 4. And there's a lot of versatility here, if we're being honest about it. Royce O'Neal's playing the 4. I mean, they have Rudy Gay and Pascal. Once again, Rudy Gay and Pascal are two guys, too. They can play the 2, 3, 4. Royce O'Neal can play the 2, 3, 4. I mean, put them wherever you feel like it. There's a lot of flexibility here. And then at the 5, you have Rudy Gobert and Hassan Whiteside as the two primary guys playing minutes there. So we've kind of already mentioned it a lot, but this is a deep team. So any other notes you have about this depth chart?
I mean, it's going to be a little the point guard situation is going to be a little interesting if Mike Conley missed a chunk of last season.
Mm-hmm.
If he goes down again, you don't want. I mean, obviously, we assume that Donovan Mitchell would once again take the role of being a primary playmaker. But when you're talking about who's going to be your starting point guard, I mean, you really want Jordan Clarkson and Joe Ingles to lead that second unit. So you wouldn't want either of them to come into the starting lineup, but that's going to be a bit concerning if something happens at Conley, because I don't think you just go with a Jared Butler to start. I mean, Jared Butler is a guy. I mean, this is a guy that he could have been a top 10 pick, but the injuries, the injury and medical concerns kind of made him slide. But I don't know if I want him as starting in my backcourt if something happens to Conley. So that are a little concerning. I think overall, while they have great, solid depth, and this is the question with this team. First of all, I think Donovan Mitchell is a superstar. Some people still debate that and don't know aren't ready to give him that title. Well, I think Donovan Mitchell is a superstar. But the reality is you need. And we talk about these guys. We talk about Jordan Clarkson. We talk about Joe Ingles. But the deal is with those two guys come off the bench, and they're best suited to come off the bench. You need a number 2. You need a strong number 2 in your starting lineup, and that is what is holding the Jazz back from winning a title. And I think that is what is going to hold them back from winning the title this year. I don't see. They have all the depth in the world. They might have the best depth in the league, league, but the reality is they don't have that number 2 scoring option, which is, you brought up a guy like CJ McCollum. Even having a guy like that as a number 2 scoring option behind Donovan, if they were able to get a guy like CJ McCollum, even, I think that could drastically change things, if we're being honest. But yeah, I love their depth, but you need at least a number 2 to be a title contender, or to have serious chance of winning the title. And that's just the sad reality, is that the depth's only going to get you so far.
Yeah, I would agree, and I feel like that's going to not happen until Mike Conley is gone. I mean, they have money tied up in him. He signed a 3-year deal, so he's got this year and next year. I feel like they're not going to have enough flexibility to chase a guy that they need until after then. So I feel like we might see a year or two of the Jazz being a top 4 seed, which is where I'd anticipate them to finish in the Western Conference, but maybe losing in the conference finals because – at the same time, though, they have a guy in Donovan Mitchell who's shown that he can carry a team. So if Donovan Mitchell went on a hot enough stretch offensively, I wouldn't be shocked if they made it to the finals, in kind of a Trae Young fashion. And this team as a whole is way better than the Hawks are. So I think that Donovan Mitchell has some of that ability. But with how deep the conference is, I mean, I don't want to rely on that. So, I mean, I brought it up in the beginning, being worried about that second option. And I agree with you. It's going to be the reality for this team. As much as I like their old school mentality, I want to see a team like this win a championship, but I just feel like they're one big piece away from
I don't even think
winning.
it's that big. I
Yeah, I
think they're a
mean,
CJ. I think they're a CJ
a
McCollum.
Drew Holiday away.
They just need a reliable second option in the starting lineup.
Right. I
That's
mean,
nothing.
it does kind of feel like the Bucks before they got Drew Holiday. We kept saying they needed just one more piece, and it didn't need to be a superstar player.
Yeah, and CJ McCollum is far from a superstar, but he's a star. He's a star player, and that's what I think. That is what the Jazz are missing from being championship contenders. Is they're a CJ McCollum level player away.
Yep, definitely. So we'll see. I'm interested to see how they follow up last season because it was incredibly efficient. Incredibly efficient. So I want to see if they can keep up that pace this year. I mean, they had several guys shooting. As a team, I believe they were almost exactly at 40% from the 3-point line, which is really impressive. And if they can do that a second straight season, that would be impressive. So we'll see how they follow up last season. They still have a lot to prove, even though they were the best team in the regular season last year. So I think that's it then. That is all 30 teams this off season. We made it. We can breathe now. We appreciate the support. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube. We're going to have our standings predictions most likely as the next episode. So you don't want to miss that. I think that's going to be a really fun episode.
Yep.
And then we'll have some in-season content as well. So subscribe on YouTube, like all the videos, subscribe if you prefer, or if you prefer the audio version, listen to that, subscribe there. We appreciate the support, and we'll see you guys next time.
Yep.